So welcome to the show, Gearóid Mooney, Division Manager of Research and Innovation for Enterprise Ireland.
Thanks, Aidan, and apologies, that's a bit of a mouthful.
But you've had, speaking of mouthfuls, an unbelievable career. You've been in the ICT and commercialisation of ICT sector for a very long time. Could you give us a quick recap of your career since you left college?
Long time. Actually, I went to NIHE Dublin, or DCU as it was known, and I was in the first year of intake. So already I think we're showing a bit of the challenge, try something new. When I got out, went straight into a startup company with a bunch of others called Kestrel Security Systems. I had an amazing 5 years there with them, and then decided I'd try something new again. So went back and joined a spin-out company out of DCU, and tried that for another 3-4 years. That took me up to about 1990 when things were tough. But what I really wanted to do is I wanted to learn for myself, how the business side of things worked, because I had been the R&D manager. So I decided to join public sector here, OLIS, the Irish Science and Technology Agency. And the original plan was spend 2 years, learn everything I could about companies, about the business aspects of commercialisation, and move on. Only I never did.
Yeah.
The career, everything changed constantly, kept me really, really interested and engaged, and I've never looked back since.
So that's really interesting that you went, I have this skill, so the R&D and innovation skill that you picked up, and by actually getting your hands dirty, it wasn't theoretical.
Yeah. No, it was actually real products to real people. Yeah.
That's we see this time and time again from people we've talked to on the show. It's the only way to learn, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's R&D, whether it's innovation. Get your hands dirty and actually feel what it's like to walk in the shoes of that role.
Absolutely.
But then you learned the commercialization side to add those skills together, and that's really where you've excelled in your career, ICT and the commercialization of ICT.
Correct. And that first job was all about finding technology partners for Irish companies in Europe. So getting a good spec, understanding what the Irish company wanted, and then trying to reach out and find opportunities to fulfill that around Europe. So that was the start of it.
Yeah, so it's funny because I've read about some really successful entrepreneurs, and instead of reading books and newspaper articles, what they read is actually the financial reports of companies to really understand what makes companies tick. And I'm sure from your research and looking for partners, in the way you're looking at that, you're looking at how does the business plan work?
Correct.
And it's almost like a matchmaking service.
Correct.
Like an old Irish matchmaker, then Kerry.
Absolutely. I suppose with the added twist of when you're actually looking for a partner, or partners for a company, you've got to hit them at exactly the right time they have a need, particularly for small enterprise. You've got to actually find what it is they're looking for at the time they know they want it, because just bringing them stuff on a random basis probably doesn't really take,
And probably confuse them as well.
Correct.
As in, like, they're trying to work on a plan, and then there's this guy coming in. And how do you identify those opportunities, Gearóid?
At this stage in my career, one of the primary areas I look into is actually the third level research system here and overseas. But primarily here, because there's quite a large state investment been made in the research system over the last 10 to 15 years, and everybody wants to see the maximum impact from that. So that would be a really good starting point for me. And there's a huge amount of opportunity there. The research system with that spend has attracted an awful lot of talent, and there's some really, really good people. And for an SME, sometimes if you're working on a problem and you need a specific piece of talent, but actually you need it to solve the problem, you don't necessarily need to hire it and keep it forever. It gives you that opportunity to build your dream team around what you're trying to solve, and then when it's done and solved, you just move on with the business.
That's really interesting, because we talked to Kingsley Aikens on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked about this notion that the world is going to go to these kind of contract-based employment where you're brought in for a project, you complete that project, and then you're on to the next project. So that totally fits what you're saying.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of willing collaborators within the research system now as well, which maybe 10, 15 years ago we just didn't have that much of,
Yeah, and just to come back to your career, so with your career, you end up in OLUS. But then OLUS dramatically changed, and eventually parts of OLUS became
Correct.
Enterprise Ireland now.
Correct.
Can we talk about that for a second? What happened with Enterprise Ireland? How it came about?
Sure. Well, it came out of a national policy. So I suppose I've always been interested in making sure the voice of the customer is heard in everything I do. But as an agency, the voice of the customer spoke. So there was both the Culleton report followed on by getting ahead of the curve with O'Driscoll, who decided that Ireland was good at certain things at that point in time, very good at attracting foreign direct investment, but actually maybe looking after homegrown industry weren't so good, and that kind of big grant approach wouldn't work to help young companies get started. Probably wouldn't work because the biggest thing a young company starting faces is cash flow. And the old grant system works well if you spend something and you claim it back. Most young startups don't have that kind of time or runway. So there was an attempt to set up an agency specifically to develop its own tools, and that would really, really encourage homegrown industry to grow and scale here.
Yeah, and we've heard Enterprise Ireland. When we talk to startups as part of the show, they all mention Enterprise Ireland as being instrumental in their career, in their starting and getting them the Kickstarter, essentially.
Yeah.
How does that work for companies? Like, just for companies who are listening, or somebody who has the bud of an idea, how does Enterprise Ireland help?
Okay, so there's funding is a really key part of it, and we've got funding offers on a number of levels. So we've got competitive start. So for those who are early and trying to figure out what their offer looks like, and that 50k would take them a long way towards helping them to figure that out. We have a competitive scheme for that where people can apply and get up to 50k of investment up front. Then for those companies who have figured out who their other investors are going to be, but could do with that piece from the state to help de-risk the project, then we've got an offer under our high potential startup offer, which is anywhere, typical investment is maybe 250 to 300k to help the company get started. But all the way through that process, we're looking at strengthening the business plan, making sure the company has the right product market fit, helping them understand that they're hearing the voice of their customer in building out what they're building, and hopefully de-risking the project then for everybody. You know,
it's something we talked about, that aspect of mentorship, essentially, or coaching.
Yes.
So the business coaching and your own knowledge of studying the commercialization part by getting your hands dirty, as well as the ICT and innovation.
Yeah.
And putting those together. And we've had some great examples of that in Ireland, spin-outs of companies where a company was set up essentially through funding, perhaps in a college, and then businesses come in and mentor them to spin out. Can you give us some examples of that?
Sure. I have two kind of key examples. One ICT, one not. One in the drug discovery aspirin area. So there's a spin-out company from Trinity, or company looking to spin out, called Solvatrin. And an entrepreneur, I think he was either a finalist or a winner of the Ernst & Young competition at one point. He came to us and said, I'm interested in other ideas. He knew a lot about another industry, not drug discovery, but he's an entrepreneur and he was really, really well connected. And the bits he didn't know, he could easily put his hand on the people that could, and managed to bring that all together with the smarts out of Trinity to form this company called Solvatrin, which is up and running now. Another really, really good example would have been the Feed Henry spin out of Waterford, which had a really, really good exit about in 2014. But the way that happened was they had some great tech they had developed using European funding from way back. We added in some commercialization funding to de-risk it a little bit further. But the piece they were missing was a leader, an entrepreneur who really could put the business case around it. So we all got lucky. We introduced him to Cathal Madloin, and Cathal came in and within months made a huge difference to the company and their future direction, and set it up to be the success that it was. Yeah,
it's really a case of bringing somebody to work on the business while everybody else works in the business.
Correct.
And that experience, I suppose, of how to wrap it, present it, etc., and put your elevator pitch together. Yeah. But what's really interesting is, from what you're saying, is there's a huge opportunity for traditional businesses, or even a fledgling business, to look for partnerships outside the business. And be that with college, be that with be that with the colleges or universities, or be that with another industry. Yeah. Can we talk about that and how you see that evolving?
Sure. I think at its most basic level that even if Ireland is the best country in the world, but even if we were absolutely top of the business league, we can't invent everything. So no matter how good your business is, there's always something out there. There's always added knowledge that you can tap into. So on a notional basis, that would seem to work, or on an emotional basis. But what we've noticed in Enterprise Ireland over the last number of years, by looking at the spend and the success of companies, is that the companies who invest in innovation and research, new products, new processes, new services, have weathered and thrived during deep downturns and continue to outperform those that don't invest in those things. But more recently, what we found out on top of that was not only did they do really well if they invested in R&D, but if they also collaborated as well as investing in their own R&D, that they were 35% higher in terms of employment over the same period as those that didn't, and an order of magnitude bigger in terms of export sales than those that didn't. Now, can you put it all down to the investment because those are really, really good companies? I would say no, but it's a strong characteristic of the ones that survive and thrive. So that collaboration piece would seem, based on the evidence we have, to add a huge amount to the business development of a company.
So there's two distinct sectors there. There's the innovation piece, so that's actually having a team or even like a part-time team who are focused on where the company's going or what opportunities are there for the company. But then there's a totally different piece, and it could be the same team, who are looking to collaborate with others to build a new product or build a new service in some way.
Yeah.
And how so what we see oftentimes is companies are under financial stress. Mm-hmm. They're looking at their bottom line and they go, you know what, I don't need an R&D department. And we saw a lot of this happen during the recessions where people just got rid of the R&D department, and then these new roles of innovation kind of came up, and it was replaced with innovation labs or innovation hubs, essentially. But what's your advice to those companies? I mean, there's empirical evidence there. Yeah. And that's the big challenge, is how can I prove to you with a business plan what the future is?
Yeah. I would say that all of our companies during the tough period in the recession leaned out. But those that still managed to maintain a core function, who, in spite of the urgent, still managed to keep focused on the important, have shown us in hard numbers that they did better than the ones who cut back too far or who made no investment in R&D and innovation over that time. So the evidence, the hard evidence, is there. So it's definitely worth it. Not only that, but within the next 6 weeks or so, the government, or the parent department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, will be publishing a national study further reinforcing with hard numbers that the investment in innovation is worth it, even in tough times. Okay,
well, we'll definitely be sharing that from the show's Twitter account. But one last question, Gearóid, is where can people find out more information?
Okay.
So both startups, but also businesses looking for partners.
Okay. So in terms of startups, I would have to direct them to the Enterprise Ireland website, which is constantly under revision with new content and new offers or recast offers that as time evolves, so do companies, so do needs, and we try to evolve our offers to go with them. On the partnering side, if you're really interested in exploring for yourself some of the opportunities around the third level and getting value out of the research system here, there's a fabulous website called knowledgetransferireland.ie, which has listings of all the research groups, searchable databases on researchers and what their areas of interest are, sample agreements to cover partnering agreements, and lovely examples there of people who've done it before and what they have gotten out of it. So I would highly recommend it if you want to do a little bit of self-education, just to explore it a bit, that website is a huge resource. The second website, I think, because we can't ignore the offer from Europe under the Horizon 2020 scheme, which is the biggest research and innovation fund on the planet right now. And Ireland is determined to make sure it makes best use of that money coming in. But we have horizon2020.ie, which will show you the national support team and who to actually pick up the phone to talk about your specific business and what the opportunities would be. And also, just on the Horizon 2020, there is a specific scheme in there for SMEs, particularly those who are doing really, really interesting things on the technology front.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because a lot of people, when I talk to them about Horizon 2020 and tell them about it, because some don't know, they think it's a university grant, or they think it's unreachable. But you said it's available for companies, it's available
Absolutely.
for SMEs, and there's actually specific funds to help SMEs
Correct.
accelerate.
Correct. So in terms of the overall company participation, about 30% of Ireland's win under Horizon 2020 currently goes to companies, and mostly SMEs. And we're kind of, at the moment, the number one SME participant in Horizon 2020 in Europe. But then also there is the SME instrument, which can put feasibility amounts of money into interesting tech companies of about 50k as a grant, and can also go over $1 million in grants for those that they feel that are truly disruptive and will really bring Europe along, and that Europe should be investing in. And so far, in the last 18 months, 15 Irish companies have gotten $1 million plus out of that particular scheme.
So it's delivering.
Delivering, yeah.
Gearóid Mooney, Division Manager for Research and Innovation for Enterprise Ireland, thank you for coming in to us.
You're welcome.